Episode 10, An Irish Tale, The Power of Belief and Stories We Tell Ourselves. What if the stories you tell yourself about who you are, what you're capable of, and where you're headed aren't true? In the green hills of Ireland, surrounded by mist and folklore, I discovered something unexpected. That the stories we carry can hold us back or set us free. Sometimes all it takes is a small shift in belief to change everything. This is the story of a ruined castle, an old Irish storyteller, and the day I learned to rewrite the tale I'd been telling myself. Ireland was exactly as I'd imagined it: rolling green hills, stone walls dividing the countryside, and villages where the pubs were older than some countries. I'd come to a small town in County Kerry, looking for a quiet escape. Rain fell constantly, turning the landscape a deeper green and painting the sky a soft grey. On my second day there, the innkeeper, Mrs. Byrne, suggested I visit an old ruined castle just outside town. "You'll love it," she said. "It's where stories live." "Stories?" I asked. She nodded. "Every stone has a tale, and if you're lucky, you might meet Seamus." "Who's Seamus?" I asked, curious. She smiled mysteriously. "You'll see." I set out that afternoon, raincoat zipped up, boots squelching in the mud. The castle ruins rose out of the mist like a ghost, stone walls crumbling, vines twisting through windows, and the echo of something ancient lingering in the air. It was beautiful, but it also felt heavy, like the weight of time itself sat on those stones. That's when I saw him, a man sitting by a fire, sheltered in what remained of the castle's great hall. He was wrapped in a wool coat, his face lined with age, but his eyes bright and alive. Beside him sat a small wooden stool. "Come in out of the rain, stranger," he said, his voice deep and warm. No one should be out alone in weather like this. I hesitated, but stepped inside. The fire crackled, and the space around him felt almost timeless. "Are you Seamus?" I asked. He chuckled. "Some call me that. Others call me a fool who tells too many tales. But stories are what keep us alive, don't they?" I sat on the stool, grateful for the warmth. "What kind of stories?" I asked. Seamus looked at me carefully, his gaze sharper than I expected. "The ones we tell ourselves," he said. "Those are the most dangerous of all." We sat in silence for a moment before Seamus began to speak, his voice weaving through the space like the wind. "Let me tell you a story," he said. "Once there was a boy who believed he was cursed. Every misfortune in his life, every failure, he blamed on this curse. 'Why try?' he'd say. 'The curse will find me.' And so he gave up, on dreams, on love, on life itself. One day, an old man told him, 'The curse isn't real. You've been telling yourself the wrong story.'" Seamus paused, his eyes fixed on me. "Do you see? The stories we tell ourselves are powerful. They shape what we believe, and what we believe shapes how we live." I shifted uncomfortably. "What if the story is true?" I asked. "What if it's not something you can just change?" Seamus smiled, his face softening. But you're forgetting something important. Stories may start in one place, but we decide how they end." I thought about his words. I had my own stories, the ones I'd told myself for years. Stories about not being good enough, about failing when I tried, about being stuck in a life that didn't feel like my own. I had accepted them as truth, as if they were written in stone. But what if they weren't? Seamus must have seen something in my face because he nodded. "Tell me this. What story do you carry that's keeping you in chains?" I hesitated. "I don't know," I admitted. "You do," he said gently. "You just don't want to say it." The rain outside grew heavier, and I stared into the fire, thinking about the stories I'd clung to. "I'm not enough. I'll never figure it out. It's too late to change." Seamus reached into his coat and pulled out a small, smooth stone. "Here," he said, placing it in my hand. "This castle has its stories, and now you have yours. If you don't like the one you're living, start writing a new one. I sat there for a long time, the stone warm in my palm. It seemed too simple, too easy, to think I could change my life just by changing my story. But as Seamus said, every great story begins with a choice. Eventually, I stood to leave. Seamus smiled as he watched me. "Remember," he said, "you decide how this tale ends. Don't let someone else write it for you." As I walked back to the village, the rain had stopped, and the sky was beginning to clear. The weight I'd been carrying, the stories of doubt, fear and failure, felt lighter. I knew it wouldn't be easy to rewrite them, but I also knew I had a choice. And maybe that's the real power of stories. They can trap us, yes, but they can also set us free. The story you tell yourself shapes the life you live. If you want a different life, start with a different story. So, I'll leave you with this. What story are you telling yourself right now? Is it holding you back, or is it setting you free? And if you could write a new ending, what would it be? Discovering the world within. From crowded streets to quiet moments, we've explored the lessons the world can teach us when we pause to listen. But the journey isn't over. In Season 2, we'll go deeper, into new places, new challenges and new discoveries about the stories we carry. Until then, remember, you are the storyteller of your life. Write something beautiful.